Valuation is an opinion. And surprisingly, value is not what somebody will pay for the property. Ooh, that's controversial, isn't it? Because that's what we say, isn't it? We always say that value is what somebody will pay for it. Who's ever heard that bandied around? Who thinks it's true? Who wants to disagree with my slide? Well, it's my presentation, so I can say what I like, can't I? It's absolutely true, though. Value is not what somebody will pay for a property. In fact, if you want to be really technical about it, if you go to the RICS, it used to be called the Red Book in the old days. I haven't been Chartered Surveyor for a while, so I'm not quite sure what they call it, but they'll have the equivalent of it. If it's not the Red Book, it'll be something like that. In the Red Book, which literally had red covers, and it had everything set out for Chartered Surveyors to tell them what was what, the definition of open market value, it specifically stated that what you pay for a property is not actually the value. Because there can be all sorts of reasons why people pay a different figure to the value. I mean, an easy example is if you've got a developer who's putting a site together and he'll overpay for a bit of land just to make the site complete or to gain access to the site. So they'll pay more than it's worth. And if you think about it, if you had a situation, for example, where maybe you had a street of identical terraced houses and each terraced house is worth, I don't know, £150,000, and you happen to meet somebody who's highly motivated and you do a great deal with them, and instead of paying £150,000 for the property, you pay £100,000, has the rest of the street suddenly gone down in value? Have they all suddenly gone from 150 down to 100,000 just because you've paid 100,000? Clearly not. That would be a nonsense, wouldn't it? So therefore, the price you've paid is not the value of the property. The value of the property is still actually 150,000, but you just happen to have bought it cheap. Is everybody with me? I haven't got time to go into the ways and means of property valuations at the moment, and you all know enough to be able to get on in property. I mean, I'm not trying to sound snobby about this. It sounds awful and say, I spent 3 years at university learning. Well, I did. I spent 3 years at university learning, so I can't tell you in sort of like 30 seconds how to value properties. But at the end of the day, in our world, most of the time, comparing with another property is the best way to do it, which is absolutely fine. For those of you who are a bit more details-minded, this could be very frustrating. But property valuations are purely an opinion. And in fact, my mortgage broker often has a bit of a laugh, and he says that if you had 10 valuers in one property, you'd have 11 different opinions. And it's kind of true, isn't it? It's kind of true. And for those of us who are more details-minded, perhaps a bit more sort of scientifically based, you might think, well, how can that be? Because surely the value is a figure. So there must be a figure. But there isn't. It's just a range of opinion. And when I was a young valuer, or younger, I wasn't that young, I was in my early 30s, but this is going back a bit, one of the things which I did when I was working in the West End was my senior partner, the firm I was with, was an expert witness in the High Court back in the early 90s when a lot of the big valuation surveyors in London were being sued by the banks because the recession of the 1990s had come along and values had fallen, and the banks, to try and get their money back, were suing the valuers, and the valuers are all paying up on their professional indemnity insurance. So it was all very messy. And there were a whole load of cases which were all heard at the same time, and my senior partner was advising the judge at the High Court, and I was advising my senior partners. That was all very exciting. And when the decision came out, because the judge gave a decision on all of the cases all at once, he basically said there is no single figure for evaluation. Okay, we know that. He said valuation is an opinion, and it's a range of opinions. So yeah, okay. And he said the general consensus seems to be that, you know, with something like a house, you can have sort of like 10% each way. You think, okay, well, that's quite helpful, but 10% still gives a 20% range, doesn't it? So that's not terribly helpful for those of us who want a precise figure, but it just happens to be that's the way it is. Any opinion within that 10% either way is going to be okay. But then he went on to say, because there was loads of cases being heard and some of them were quite complex, he went on to say that if the property is particularly difficult to value, if the property is particularly unusual, or if there is a lack of comparable evidence, then the range could be as much as like 25% each way. So you've got like a 50% range. So that's quite a big range, isn't it? I hope you found this video useful and informative. And if you did, then please come over to my website, www.thepropertyteacher.co.uk, where where you'll find loads more great property-related resources, including free special reports to download and my best-selling series of ebooks, which includes the Successful Property Renovators Workshop, 63 common defects in investment property and how to spot them. And if you're just starting out in property, or if you want to grow your portfolio, you may be particularly interested in the Successful Property Investors Strategy Workshop, in which I'll take you through exactly how I started and built my property portfolio, starting literally with none of my own money, and how I built a portfolio of £2 million worth of property in just 4 years. And that was starting from scratch. I'll take you through everything that I did right so that you can copy me and do the same. And I'll also show you everything that I did wrong so that you can avoid the mistakes that I made and so that you can progress in property and be far more successful far more quickly than I ever was. And this is based upon my own real life experience, and it took me about 4 years to actually work out how to do property investing properly. But in the 200 pages in the Successful Property Investors Strategy Workshop, I'm going to show you all of that 4 years knowledge condensed down so that you can use it immediately. And until next time, here's to successful property investing.